Thing.
Not your business.
Wouldn't it look better if I had the microphone like look like I am a real host? Left-hand threads on the microphone. Am I on? Okay. All right. How about now? How's that sound? Yep. There it is. Can hear now. Okay. Thanks, Haven. You know what, Haven? I haven't seen you in way too long. I've been wondering what you've been doing. I don't see posting on Facebook or anything. And no chickens this year. That was disappointing. I loved going by there and seeing all those chicken tractors running around. Well, I'm gonna call you. I want to see what's going on with you. Um, I got things to show you here. Actually, I got a lot of things going on. Uh, and I guess, well, it is Tuesday night, the day after Inauguration Day. Wasn't that exciting? That was exciting. I listened to bits and pieces of it all day long, and it was just really something else. Today's Tuesday. This is the Anyone Can Farm Experience live chat, Tuesday night edition. Today is the 21st of January, and it is cold out there, campers. It is really cold out there. Last night we had temperatures down around 9 below. Let's see, what is it now? 6 below, -6, -6. Wow. It is January, but still, that's pretty cold. That's pretty darn cold. Things happen when it's real cold like this. And that's usually I like to talk about things that I'm involved with. That's the best subject to talk about. And I don't know who needs to hear this. I know, Haven, you know that things go wrong when it's cold. But I think there's somebody out there that's starting up a new homestead. And so the subject tonight is homestead planning and the cold, right? So, but before I get going on that, let's see. Nothing much on the agenda. We won't see any open farm type events until April, and that will be the seed savers. It's more like the seed exchange, and that's a pretty neat day. Last year was really neat. We changed it we changed it to May. We changed it to May because April can be cold, can be very cold. All right, we got Keith with us, we got Haven with us, we got Belva with us, right on. And so we changed it to May, and last year was way better. We had a nice day, and we had baby goats, and we had lots of people brought their families, and Jordan Buck brought me some. He brought some Jerusalem artichokes to share, and I guess nobody wanted them, so he left them for me, and I planted them, and I've been eating Jerusalem fartichokes ever since, and I really like them. I didn't get enough of them dug, though, but they'll be okay till spring. I'm quite sure. Brian Jacobs with us. Right on, man. Brian's all broke up over the election. That's too bad. Brian Jacobs, he, him, her, him, he. Yeah. Sorry about that, pal. But what a day. Yesterday was real cold, too, and last night was, I think it was the coldest that it's going to get, and it's just uphill from here. Like tomorrow, the high is going to be 17. So, yeah. So that's like Miami Beach compared to what it is now. And the reason I am going to talk about planning and the homestead is because today we had a malfunction. We had a malfunction, and it's not the first. You all know that, and I'm just going to talk about this is because this is where I'm where I'm focusing my attention. But what went on here today is, first thing was we milked. So me and Frank milk on Tuesday, and we're today was the fourth day, excuse me, that we used the new milk house. And for those of you that don't know, we renovated the old milk house, and that was the one that was built somewhere around 1905 when they built the barn. And so we broke all the concrete off the floor. We put in a wall. We put in a ceiling. We put in, let's see, we put in an apartment above it. And right now that's just dried in. It's not insulated or anything, but it's got a brand new roof on it. The downstairs is where the milk house is. So it's got a new floor, drains. It's about 85% insulated. We have a sink in there now. We have a counter. I'm building another counter. It's heated. So we have a cold water line that runs in. We moved our water heater that used to be in the butcher shop over, and because we are using hot water in the milk house every single day to get started and then to finish up, to clean all the equipment and stuff. And what we gain by doing this is it is adjacent to the milk parlor. And the parlor is where the cows come in. They stand in their stanchions. They get something to eat. We can lock them in, and they're fairly close together. There's 5 stanchions in there, and I think that's where I'm going to leave it. And then we can get in between them with our milking machine, set it down on the ground. You hook the claw up to the cow's udder and get the milk. And then we were bringing the milk from there over to the old butcher shop, which is across the driveway. So I'd say it's probably a 20-second walk. Would it be that much even? But then you've got to open a door and then another door and then put the milk in a bucket and then take the milking machine back. Or we've been taking buckets over there and dumping it in buckets and taking the buckets over. And, it was better than the way we used to do it, which was we just took our cow and tied her to a fence post and went to work milking her just by hand, squirt, 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 squirt. And then we moved to the bucket milker. Well, we moved to a surge milker. Hey, Sean, how you doing? We moved to a surge milker. That's a belly milker, they call it. And that hangs underneath the cow. And you have to have a little vacuum pump or a vacuum compressor, or a compressor, I guess. And, there's a learning curve on that. And when it's cold outside, that compressor doesn't really want to work. So then we had to have a heater to heat it. And we were using a torpedo heater. I don't know if you guys know what that is exactly, but it's you can burn, the ones I have burn multi-fuel. You can burn anything, kerosene, gasoline, diesel fuel in it. I got mine from Home Depot. It's I don't remember the brand name. I actually have 2 of them. I have a big one and a smaller one, and I really like them. They have wheels on them. You can wheel them around. They use a lot of fuel, but boy, they throw some heat. And so we had to fire that up every day first before we could get going. Well, now with the milk house that is heated, I went in there this morning and it was 62 degrees, and I had the heater on its lowest setting. It's a propane heater. And that took some doing. There was a lot of piping that had to be installed, and, trial and error getting the heater to work. It was a heater that I got off Keith. It's in real good condition. It had to be kind of worked on a little bit to make it to work. So there was a lot involved in getting this little room that's, it's about 14 by 18. Right? Concrete walls on 2 sides that are about a foot thick, poured in 1910 or so, maybe. And then the other sides, there was no wall to the west that faced into the parlor. And so we built that wall. We had to get that wall insulated real heavy. And then we had to put a wall on the south where there was nothing before. So we had to tear what was there out. I mean, it was a lot of work. Had to put windows in, and there was a lot of work involved. And then putting the ceiling in, which is the floor for the apartment above it. That took some doing. All my wood came from Homestead Provisions, Parker Homes. 95% of it. Some of it we've had to just go and grab from the lumber company when Parker's quite a ways away from me. So there's a lot going on, lot big project, and we're in our 4th day of using it. 4th day, and it came right at this frigid cold, cold soak is what I would call it. And you think, well, that's bad. No, actually that's good. That's good, because when I planned to build this, there was some things that I would do different, right? And so I would share those things with you. So far, the failures that we've had in there, no drain failures. We didn't insulate it. That wasn't a priority to get it insulated. The priority was, say, back in November, was to get water run in there and be able to protect the water from the cold, the November cold. But December cold and November cold are two different things. And then December cold and January cold, they can be completely different. Can be. This year they are. All right. So this year we had 12 below, and that night that we got 12 below, I discovered a weak spot in the system, and the water froze. And so we had to find out where the water froze. When you have a water freezing condition in a pipe, if you leave it, the freeze plug gets bigger and longer and more intense. So you have to find that. And so we did find it, and we fixed it. And it required a lot of digging. And that was right before Christmas. We found that. And then beginning of the week, yeah, we had another really cold night, and I had another place where it froze. And I kind of thought I knew where it was, and I put a heater on that area, and sure enough, that's where it was. So I had to take some ceiling panel down and insulate those pipes much better and put the ceiling panel up. And I thought, yeah, that should be good. We shouldn't have a problem with that now. Well, this morning, our cold water was working just fine, but the hot water from the milk house back to the butcher shop was solid. It was not going. And so I put the heater on every place that I thought it would be, and to no avail. It didn't work. So I wound up having to cut the line and determine which end it was plugged on. So once I determined which end it was, then I got the bright idea. I'm going to find out exactly where that plug is. And so I took a piece of fence wire, about 10 feet long, and I shoved it down. And I thought it would be like 2 or 3 feet down. No. 10 feet in, I'm still not hitting it. So I got another piece of wire, and this piece was about 20 feet long. And I start shoving that in. 14 feet in, I hit it. So I know right where it is. And I just determined this a little while ago, like maybe an hour and a half ago. And that would require that I have to dig it up and get some heat on it, and then get it covered back up again, but insulate it this time and put it deeper. It's actually in a place where I wouldn't think it would freeze. And so, live and learn. So tomorrow, What I did to keep it from getting worse is I put straw bales on top of it, hoping that that will hold it. But if not, we will dig the entire line up and we will put it down another foot. We'll put insulation under it and around it, right? And I have this rigid board insulation that I get from Home Depot, and that'll fix that. But I'm actually glad that it happened. I'm actually glad that it happened because when we build a system, and this is the milking system, there's a ton of different pieces to it that go to it. And those pieces have to be executed. It's like a process that's compiled of a bunch of other processes. And those processes are executed around the calendar, right? So a lot of times when you're designing something and it's in the summertime, you're not thinking 10 below. You just don't think that way. And when you go to bury a water line, you think, well, it's inside. And I don't think, it'll be okay at 2 feet. Well, I found out today that it's not. Even in dry dirt inside the building, it still froze. So live and learn on that one. So tomorrow we'll get that straightened out. But yeah, so what I'd like to talk about is planning your homestead out, and specifically tonight, planning for cold weather. Like you can have a week of cold weather and it can really ruin things for you. So let me just give you a little rundown of what happened here today. We got our milking done. We had cold water in the milk house, and the water heater's in there. So we had hot water. So we were good there. And I thought, nothing happened. We're okay. And when I was about halfway done putting milk in jars and I had a break, I went into the butcher shop to get that fired up because we had planned to work in there today. We have got beef on the table, and we had about one pig left on the table that we wanted to get all cut up, packaged, and in the freezer for a customer that's coming to get it this weekend, I think. And then we would start on the beef. Well, when I went in there, I turned the cold water on. Yep, fine, that's working good. Turned the hot water on. Nothing. Darn it. So now my day is upset. Like I was going to be working in there today, and it's a good place to work when it's 10 below out, because we've got a wood stove in there and a torpedo heater that we run to take up the slack or just to get it heated up quick, and then the wood stove takes it from there. Well, I had to figure out where this ice plug is, and I have to get it fixed. And I worked on that until about 5 o'clock. And then I finally cut the line to determine which side it was on. So my day was totally upset, but that is my job here. Once the butcher shop was fired up, Jill and our hired guy and the kids worked in there and got mostly everything done that needed to be done. And so tomorrow we will hit the ground running. And we do have hot water in the milk house. So anytime we need hot water, we can go over there and just get a bucket full of it, for cleaning and stuff. So, the workaround is there. But when I looked at how I planned that out, I thought I could have done better. I could have planned this out much better than I did. So if I was going to be starting from scratch right now, I would be thinking of that one day that you're going to have where it's going to be very, very cold, and thinking about, what happens if, we don't have water? what happens if we don't have electricity? What happens if the well kicks off? You think about those things. And when you do your planning or engineering, you're going to go the extra mile on that. You're going to go down you'll put your water line down as far as you can reach, and do that because you'll know that section of it is okay. And what this little incident that we have, which is not a big deal, it really isn't a big deal. It's just going to be a little elbow grease tomorrow, digging that back up, but that's not a big deal. Not when you have boys. They like digging. So, but what it tells me is, or what I found today was, it was almost like an operational check, and we found the weak spot, right? And I'm kind of glad I found it now instead of at a more inopportune time, right? It's cold, so we're working right now kind of minimums, we call it. Like, we do what we have to do, but then anything else outside, let that go. Do what you got to do outside, but let things go and try to work inside, right? Just because. And here's why. This is a planning thing. So I'm looking at the weather report, and it says Tuesday is going to be the peak cold, right? So what I say, what I want to do is, I do not want to have to fire up a piece of equipment on a really cold day if I can help it, because things break when it's cold. You're more prone to breakages. Excuse me. On a cold day. So one of the things that I have to do is I have to make sure that the cows have a bale of hay. And so I look at it and say, oh, that's going to last till Thursday, is what I thought when I looked at it. So I'll be okay. We'll be coming down the other side of the peak. And Thursday is going to be less cold. It's going to be 18 tomorrow. It's going to be way less cold than it was today. We hovered right around 8 below all day. But what I didn't plan on was, when it's real cold, the cows' metabolism turns up to keep them warm, so they eat more hay. Like, my cows were standing at the hay feeder just eating constantly during this cold spell. So I went out today, or I was just passing by, and it's like, oh, these guys don't have any hay. What's the story? So I go check the cows that are down below. They didn't have any hay either. Like, here it is, Wednesday or Tuesday, peak cold. I got to start the tractor up. I have to. So what's my takeaway from that? Right? What's my takeaway? Yeah, I could have avoided it. I could have. And you'd think at this stage of the game, I would know that. So what I'm talking about here really is like risk mitigation. Like, there's always going to be a risk. You fire that tractor up, you're taking a risk, even if it's a 40-degree day, that something can break. But the probability of something breaking goes up as the temperature goes down. Like, our tractor wouldn't have even started today if I didn't plug it in for a half an hour. And so what happens then? You have a tractor that's plugged in, it's pulling some amperage, and then, you've got heaters going, you've got, people in the house doing dishes, doing whatever. And so now I'm putting a strain on the electrical grid on this farm, and things go wrong. Things go wrong there. When you pull too much amperage through breakers for a long period of time, they'll fail, right? And all of a sudden you have something that's not working, and it's like, what now? and you go over and look at the breaker and try to pop it, try to put it back on, and it flips off again. Oh, do we have a short in the line? I don't think so. And then you test the breaker and you find out, oh, this breaker's just kind of worn out. So I got to replace it. That could mean a trip to the hardware store. But I keep extra ones around. So when they do fail, which it's surprising. It's surprising. When you use stuff a lot, it's surprising how often they do fail. All right. So I did get the tractor started and went out, grabbed one bale and took it up the driveway and got over to the milk cows. Just about to drop it in, and the tractor starts to. And, when you have a diesel tractor and it runs out of fuel, now you've got a chore ahead of you. At least with mine, you do. I don't know. Maybe other people have self-priming tractors. I don't. I have to break all of my injectors loose, crank it. It doesn't really want to crank real good when it's 10 below, and then tighten them back up until it fires off. Well, I sure didn't want to have to do that out in the wind, at 10 below. And I'm bundled up too, but that wind is hitting my cheeks and it's uncomfortable. I didn't want to be there any longer than I had to. So it didn't shut off, but it coughed a little bit. And I thought, oh, I know what this is. I know what it is. And if it does shut off and I got to stand out here and prime this thing, it's my fault. I know what it is because I've been doing this long enough. When it gets cold like this, if you have any moisture in your fuel and it's this cold, that moisture will turn to ice. And those little ice pieces will clog the lines and they will restrict the fuel flow. And it can restrict it bad enough where it'll shut it right off. And you'll think, oh, I'm out of fuel. Well, it didn't shut off, but it restricted the lines. And so the tractor wasn't running good. And the next thing is it would have shut off, but it didn't. So then what I have to do, I have to take it down, bring the heater out, the torpedo heater again, put a shroud over the tractor of a tarp, and then run the heater in there for a while until it gets nice and warm and any crystals, like ice crystals, will go away. They'll just melt. And then what you need to do is put in a couple of cans of isopropyl alcohol, because the isopropyl will go right to the water and it will mix, and then the water won't freeze. And it actually isolates that water, and then that water can go through the system and just burn off, right? But I should have done that in November. I should have just run a couple of cans of isopropyl through it in November. But I didn't. I'll tell you another thing that I should have done, and this is food for thought here. A tractor, you think about it because it's got a hood on it and everything. You think about it like it's a car. And unless it's a show car or a convertible, you don't really worry about it too much if it's sitting out in the rain. Tractor's a different story. I can tell you, your tractor should be under a roof every single night of the year. Unless you're out there working with it at night, it should be in. And you learn the hard way, because water in the summertime works its way down into wire bundles and cables. And then in the wintertime, it freezes. And so I had that happen this year. And I've actually had it happen like 3 winters, so bad that I had to replace cables, control cables. And this year, I had to do it again. And it was because in the summertime, it's not going to rain tonight. You wake up in the morning, it's pouring. And my tractor's getting soaked. And that is one of the most important pieces of equipment that I have on the farm. And it's my fault when that happens. It is absolutely my fault. So anyway, I did get the tractor fired up, and I got the water thing situated pretty good, and got both my groups of cows fed. and they will be okay until the day after tomorrow, at least, probably a little longer than that. But I'll be checking them real close. And yeah, when the cold comes in, you really want to slow down, think about all your processes that are going on, and mitigate risk every time you can. I'm speaking operationally. That's when you're operating, you're thinking that way. But what we want to talk about, I think, is planning. When you're planning your homestead and you're saying, oh, I'm going to have a water line there. I want to have a water line here. I want to do this here. When it gets real cold, water freezes. I mean, obviously. We put water lines down at 4 feet, maybe a little bit deeper. I've heard people say they need to be at 6 feet. I don't really buy that. But when we rent a ditch witch, it'll go 4 feet and then a little bit more. And we go as deep as it will go and lay that water line down in there. So when you're putting water lines in, if you plan to get water out of them in the wintertime, go as deep as the ditch witch will go. If you've got a backhoe and you're putting water lines in, well, the difference between 4 feet and 6 feet is not that much. But I don't think 6 feet is necessary. So then another thing that comes up a lot of times is people like to run water right to the area where they're going to be watering livestock. I think that's a bad idea. I think you want to have a distance between those things, because what happens is if you have a water tank there and the cows are drinking out of it, let's say, they're going to splash it around. They may even crack the tank, and you would have a lot of water on the ground right there. And if your hydrant, your frost-free hydrant, is there, you will have water that will travel down alongside the outside of it. And frost is somewhat like electricity. It will follow water to great depths. And if you have water going down alongside of that frost-free hydrant, and maybe I should explain what a frost-free hydrant is. A frost-free hydrant is a water spout attached to a pipe. And when you actuate the handle to the up position, you're actuating a rod that goes down to the bottom of that hydrant, which there's some long ones. I've seen some that are 10 feet long. So you'd have maybe 4 feet above the ground and 6 feet below the ground. And the valve is on the bottom. So when you shut it down, the water runs down that pipe alongside the outside of the actuating rod to the bottom of it, and it drains out. And you usually put gravel down or stone down in the bottom so the water can drain out into the ground. And then there's no water in the pipe to freeze. And when you turn it on, you've got water coming up, cold water from your well, or if you're on city water or whatever. And generally, like, the water temperature here is 61 coming out of the ground. So from 61 to 32 is a pretty good gap. And when you've got 60-degree water flowing through that pipe, it's actually warming that pipe to 60 degrees. And your chances of it freezing are pretty slim. But when you're planning that, I think that you want to put it outside of where the animals are, the frost-free hydrant, outside of it. Why? Because the animals can rub up against it. They can be roughhousing, and one of them get thrown into it, especially with cows. They're heavy. It could bend it, and I know because I've had it happen. And then when you try to actuate it, the rod is bent inside the pipe, and you can't budge it. And so what do you have to do? If you've got to get water to those cows and it's the winter time, right? what are you going to do? Oh, let's say you've got 5 cows and you're just going to, well, I'll bring a bucket out to them. And that's not going to go very far, and they're all going to want to drink it at the same time. So what's going to happen to your trough while you're going to get another bucket? Oh, they will have that thing all over the field, or torn apart because they're all trying to get their full heads in there to drink. So planning is really essential, especially for cold weather operations when it comes to cattle. Pigs, not so bad up where I'm at, because pigs eat snow. They just play in the water. They like snow better, it seems, at least the type of pigs that we have. Oh, Sean's with us. Howdy from Texas tundra. In the teens for much of the day today. Yeah, that is cold for out there in Texas. Cold in the winter and hot in the summer. Yeah. I think the whole United States is getting hit with a pretty good cold snap. I noticed they had the inauguration indoors yesterday because it was, can you imagine that? Standing out there with your ears exposed and terrible. I would not want to do that. And people have to get there quite a ways ahead of time just to see this inauguration and hear the speech. And then you can't just get out of there either, right? So you're going to be in the cold for, could be 5 hours, that would be rough. Could be longer. Yeah, so they did it inside, and according to El Presidente, it was like 72 degrees in there, so they had a good time. But when you're planning, plan on, say, like with frost-free hydrant. Okay, what if I have to dig this up in the wintertime? Which you might, because you've got to have water to those cows. So you might have to dig that up. Do you want to be digging in with the cows, or do you want to be digging on the outside? I can tell you, you do not want to have equipment in there digging with the cows, because as soon as you get a hole started, every one of those cows wants to go over and see what you're doing. And you could wind up having a cow that goes down in the hole. Has that ever happened here? Yes, it has. Actually, I've had that happen twice. One time was tragic because I've told this story before. Our well, it's a long story. There was a misalignment in the well, and the pressure tank that was in there, wound up a leak at the bottom of it, and it actually almost floated the thing out of the ground. There was so much water coming out, and the pressure switch was in op, and the well didn't know that it should shut off, so it ran for a long time, pumping a lot of water, and the hole was sopped. It was mud. We had to dig it out by hand, and we did, and we reconfigured the whole thing, put in a new pressure tank, new switch, all that stuff, all new. Excellent. It's working great. Tell you what, let's leave the hole open so we can inspect it tomorrow to see if there's any leaks that have developed. Tell you what, yeah, good idea. That makes sense, right? So we put some stakes up around it, put a little bit of electric fence around it. Cows won't go near that. No, they won't go near that. Cows wound up getting out that night. Who knows why? We're sitting around the campfire and we hear them out. What the heck? The milk cows. And they never get out. But yeah, that night they got out. And when we were chasing them in, right into the hole. One of them went right in the hole. Broke the pressure tank off to the side. The pipes that were holding it together snapped off. Water flying everywhere. And it's 10:30 at night. It was dark, and this is in the summertime. So, I thought you were going to take a shower tonight. No, you're not. No, you're not even going to have a drink of water tonight because it was 10:30 at night. The hole was sopped. Not going to be able to do anything. Got to wait till tomorrow. So I slept real good that night, thinking, I know what I'm doing tomorrow night. Sergeant Zumwald's with us. About time you get in here. Hello from Greenbow. Where you been, lad? I hope things are good. We're going to have, you know what we're going to do? You might be interested in this. We're going to have, because I'll tell you what's coming. I know this is a little off the, but you got to do some planning here. You got to do some planning. You're way down there in Greenbow, Alabama, so you won't be bothering me. But the number 4 thing on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s list was raw milk. Like, he's all about raw milk. He drinks raw milk all the time, or just regular milk instead of boiled milk. Grade A is boiled milk. So what people are going to start to realize, and I think they already have, is if you're not grade A, nobody gets to tell you what to do. It's only when you're grade A that you've signed on to a certain protocol, and then the milk inspector comes and says, are you doing the protocol that you agreed to do? Right? But if you're not grade A, you do what you want. You can let your milk sit in the sun for 4 days and then sell it to people. If they want to buy it, you can. The Department of Ag does not have oversight on private small dairy. It could be a large dairy. Now, you won't be able to sell it in stores because those stores have an agreement with the health department that they will only sell grade A milk. So I think that you're going to see small dairies start to pop up now because people are starting to figure out, oh, you mean I don't have to do what these jerks tell us to do? You mean they can't come in and raid me and all this stuff? No, they can't. So we'll start seeing small dairies pop up because more and more people like Andy have opted for a career in farming, and milking cows it's a good way to go. It's lucrative. It's like a gateway for other things. When you have people coming to your farm, when you have people coming to your farm to get milk and they see, oh, you have hamburger too, and then they'll take, so it's when you're running a herd share, generally what people are doing is they're taking some to a drop point, and then the people who live around them are coming to the farm and going into some place. Some people just have a refrigerator on the back porch that they're putting their milk in. And that's where we started. We had a refrigerator that was sitting outside of the butcher shop that we put milk in. And talk about planning. Had to move it in the first winter because I never thought, oh, it'll freeze if it's in the refrigerator outside. It never dawned on me that it would freeze. And yeah, it did, and the bottles broke. So we moved it in, and then we had people coming in the butcher shop to get their milk. And that was a little cumbersome because sometimes we'd have, chicken processing going on, and then people are coming in to get milk, and it's like, this doesn't. So we changed it, and now we have the old butcher shop was turned into a store/cafe. And Andy, that's where we feed people when they come for hog harvest class now instead of the house. So things are changing. But my point there is, I think you're going to see people like Andy had a career in the military, highly trained, highly trainable. When you're getting done with your military service, you got a lot of people knocking on your door saying, you want to come work for us? Because they know that you'll show up for work and that you probably don't have a pile of DUIs and you probably don't have a drug problem, and you'll probably do what you're asked to do and even go far beyond that. So, but Andy, like me, decided, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do this. I want to be in the life business, not the death business anymore. Right. So, and as people figure out that small dairies is a good way to go, they'll say, well, how do I do this? Is it just, watch a YouTube video. Well, I think to do dairying well, safely, profitably, it makes a lot of sense. Just like, how do you butcher a pig? Go do it with somebody that does it all the time, and somebody that's willing to share with you, some of the tricks of the trade, how to do it. I think that I would be correct that people who have taken our class, the hog processing class, have gone back to their homestead and they've done it, and they would probably all agree that, yeah, it's a good thing I did take that class. I probably could have struggled through it, but I'm ahead of my peers by getting some training. It makes sense. Training makes sense. When we were in the military, Andy, nothing we did, well, not a lot of what we did was just, go out there and see if you can figure out how to put fuel on that F-15. See how that, I don't know, just out. No, everything's training. It starts in the classroom, and it's out on the line, and then you're working with somebody else, and then you're finally working by yourself. And I just pull that out of my hat. I know you didn't put gas on planes, but I did for a while before I was in the military. So I had to be trained how to do it. Most of the things. So then when it comes to farming, we think, oh, you just do it. No, there's, you can struggle through it, and you'll have mistakes. Mistakes are good. Mistakes are good. Mistakes on F-15s, that's not good. But in farming, mistakes are good. You learn from those mistakes. But I think you did what? You did make mistakes. Yeah. Go up, put the gas on that airplane. What kind? I don't know. Whatever you can fit in the tank. But I think training helps. So I'm going to propose this. The apartment that we built above the milk house, how would it be if we had crew chief on fighters? Yeah, I know. But, that's right. You guys would. No, you don't hook it up. I don't think. Anyway, that's a long time ago. Do it if you want to, you can. But I'm proposing that someone could come stay in the milk house suite and then be immersed in the herd share program, like milk with us, bottle with us, turn the cows out, rotationally graze the cows, make sure the cows got water, the whole thing. And then let's talk about this, and let's answer your questions, and let's tell you the things that you're not even asking that you need to know. Let's talk about the health of the animals. Let's talk about your customers. Let's talk about developing a customer base and running herd on the customer base. If you live out west, people will say, "Oh, you're going to have to run herd on those kids." Well, your customer base, they have to be trained. This is how we do it. And I mean, everything from where to park to how to fill out forms to all those things. They have to be trained on the way we do it. Because if you have 50 customers and they all do their own thing, like, yeah, I know the milk that's in here is got a name on it, but I like that name, so I'm going to take that milk. Well, that doesn't really work, because if your name is Gertrude and you take Andrea's milk, then Andrea's going to be like, where's my milk? So there's all kinds of things that happen, and I don't think that you could even completely finish that conversation in an hour. I think it would take much longer than that. And it's sort of like playing checkers. If they move here, then you got to move here, And a lot of times, well, I guess I won't go into that too much. But you grow to love your customers after a while. You grow to trust your customers after a while. And you want them to trust you as well. So, like, for us, we have a steady stream of people coming through here getting their milk. A lot of them pay cash. And so there's it used to be a milk can. It used to be a coffee can. Now it's like a table. We don't have a cash box down there yet, but I'm going to. And they just put their money on there and then write down, hey, this is my cash. And you get used to it after a while, and they get used to it. But it is a constant training. So anyway, that could be involved in this new how to run a herd share weekend. And it would cost a lot of money, and you'd get to stay in the milk house suite and eat at the cafe and fool around with the cows and be with us for the weekend. And I think, Andy Zumwalt, you'd be a perfect candidate. Bring that pretty wife of yours with you. You'd have the weekend to remember. I haven't met her. I've just seen her on Facebook. But yeah, planning is huge. Some of the systems that go down, our equipment goes down when it gets real cold. Batteries go down when you're planning it out. If you do have a tractor, make sure that you can keep that tractor in. It'll be 20 degrees warmer inside than if it's outside getting blown on by the wind chill. But that's planning. Priority is to keep the equipment inside if you can. And if you can't, you should cover them. Don't let your equipment get rained on. I'm in the process right now of putting a lean-to. Well, right now it's just here. I haven't actually dug one post hole, but I want to put a lean-to on the feed barn, which was the hay barn, but now it's the feed barn. And I want to be able to put my baler under and my hay bine under. They're big pieces of equipment, and I hate to just see them sitting out in the sun and everything else because they get beat up. Rain, snow. I did have a kind of a tragedy yesterday. I had a litter of pigs that I lost. And it was completely my fault. One of my sows farrowed, and there's 4 huts out there, but all the pigs decided to get in the hut that she farrowed in, and so all the babies got crushed. Yeah, tragic, just tragic. Completely my fault. But you know why they went into that hut is because there was a lot of bedding in that hut, and I put that in for her. But they all wanted to be in on that bedding. And I could have prevented that if I just had gone out and made sure all the huts were bedded, and it wouldn't have happened. So that one's definitely mine. Every time something happens, I can really trace it back to something I did or something I didn't do. You really can't blame the weather. The weather's going to come. Everybody's got a phone. They can see what's coming, and you should be able to head off any potential problems. Yeah. So planning. I had a problem, and I told you guys about this last week. I lost a calf Christmas night, and the vet came when the calf's twin started to display some of the same characteristics. And so I called the vet. Our job here is to put the welfare of the animal first. And so $100 vet call is not something that I do lightly, but I had done everything I could for this calf, and it wasn't enough. So I called the vet, and he came out, looked the calf over, took the temp, listened to him. By this time, the calf had been moved in, actually in the milk house because it was warm. And he said, this calf is skinny. Let me see where you're feeding him. And so I took him out, and there was 2 other calves out there, or 3. And he said, this is not good. This is not good. And he's being really careful with me. But the calves and the sheep were together. And in my mind, well, that'll be okay. They had 3 huts right in a row. But what was happening is the sheep don't mind being in with the calves, but the calves don't want to be in with the sheep. I wouldn't want to be in with sheep either. I don't like sheep. I would rather be in with the calves. But if the sheep get in there first and they disperse themselves out amongst the 3 huts, then the calves don't want to get in there. And the calves stand out, and the wind's whistling through there. And I wasn't graining them. I thought they were big enough that they'd be fine on hay. I had never had them in this spot. And when I walked out there, it was like, wow, that wind really is cutting across here. And those poor calves are just standing there. They can't tell you that they're freezing to death until you see one of them laying over the head back. And that was what happened. So he said, this calf is skinny. This calf, he says, needs groceries. So I like, oh, this is my fault. So I moved all the calves up to another area that's sheltered from the wind. I put huts in there for them, bedded them just as good as I could with straw. And they went right in and laid down in the straw. And then I put a feeder in there for them. And I put a bag of grain in it, sweet feed. And they all went over and ate some and then went back and laid down. And one of the calves, I think I told you about this last week. One of the calves was a bull calf. And it was a bull calf that was born late summer, but it was born down with the steers, the beef cows, and born a bull. I didn't even see him, and we figured he was already a week old by the time we saw him. And to our credit, there was another calf that was in there that was a steered calf. So it was a bull calf that had been castrated that looked very much like this new calf, very much. They had the same coloring. And so nobody noticed it until it was, hey, we got 2 calves down there that are white and brown. And so I went down there and like, yeah, that must have been, we bought some calves from my brother-in-law for beef animals. And one of them was a heifer. And he's like, yeah, I don't care. It's not going to be a good mother cow. For whatever reason, he said, but it'd be fine for beef. And then remember we had that, Shauna will remember this cow. It was this bull that I had, Endeavor. He was the last bull that I had on this place, or second to last. And when he found out that there was a mother cow down there, he went down and got her. And then he jumped the fence again and went back in with the milk cows. Like, you don't want bulls on your farm. So, especially during tribe day when they get out. And then I'm on my motorcycle and I run right into them. You know, we're nose and nose, this big bull, Guernsey bull, and he was mean too. But anyway, so this calf, I looked at him and he was also kind of skinny. You know, it takes a trained eye to really look at them because their fur kind of puffs up in the wintertime. But when I really look close, he was skinny too. And so we got behind him and chased him up to the barnyard, which when he was in prime shape, you would never get behind him. He would stay out in front of you and he would run circles around you. You could never herd him. He was way too powerful and way too strong and way too fast. But anyway, he was pretty weakened. So we were able to, 4 of us, get him up to the barnyard. And while he was up there, Jim got a rope on him and we tackled him down and castrated him. I castrated him. And he was too big for bands. You know, we usually band them. It's like a rubber band that you put over their testicle, and it just constricts down until it finally just falls off. But he was too big for that, so I used a knife. I cut his sack, and pulled the ball out and cut it off. And usually they stop bleeding. They just stop. And if they don't, I don't know what you do, because I don't usually cut them like that. I usually band them. With pigs, they always stop bleeding. I've never had a pig that bled for any length of time. So it was a cold day. Jill and I had to go to town for something. We went to town in the afternoon, got back at 7. I went out to check around before I came in. It was cold. And I checked on him to check on Leroy, is his name. And he was laying down with his head on the ground. Like, what the? So I got him pulled up. I'm looking him over. He's still bleeding. And that blood was coming out, must have been an artery, about as thick as a pencil lead, just steady. Number 2 pencil. So still couldn't get a band on him. I was going to try that. With no testicle in there, I thought maybe I could get a band on it. So I got a piece of 550 cord. You guys know what that is? 550 cord. It'll hold 550 pounds tensile strength. So we use a lot of that around here. So I got some of that, and I tied around his sack up as close as I could get to him, and I cinched it off. And Jill pulled on one side, I pulled on the other. We got it as tight as we could, and then knotted it. He was still bleeding. So then I got a pole barn spike, and I put it in there, and I gave it one twist and then tied that off, effectively making a tourniquet. And he stopped bleeding. But he had lost so much blood. So much blood. I mean, I looked in the hut that he was in, and the puddle was like this big, and the snow under the bedding was just thick with blood. And I thought, I don't know if he's going to make it. All that blood. And we got him in, found him back in the hut, got him propped up so he lay over on his side, and propped him up with a bale so he'd stay up all night. And did what I could for him, gave him something to drink. He drank. And then went in, stayed in for a couple hours, went back out and checked him. His head was still up. So it went on for 2 days, and he didn't seem to be getting a whole lot better. So I thought, I'm calling the vet. So I called him. He couldn't come. He said, I can be there in the morning. And I was like, I don't know if he's going to make it till morning. But he did, and he actually looked a lot better in the morning. Still not on his feet, though. And that's not good, because when they lay down for too long, then they just don't want to get up. And then the next day, I went out, and he was up on his feet. He was up on his feet, and he was picking around at the hay and stuff, and I gave him some sweet feed. He ate a couple mouthfuls, and now he's up, and you can't even tell that he was in rough shape. So his body rebuilt, and but now let's talk planning. When you know in the wintertime it's going to get as cold as it does here, and you've got young animals, they have to be out of the wind. And to my credit, I thought that they were going in with the sheep. I don't know why I thought that. I just thought that they would. But then when I observed them closer, I see that when a sheep is in there, they're not going in there. If they're in there and a sheep go in there, they come out. I did not know that, but I do now. And now you know, hopefully, that. So training, training helps. And this is training, I guess. How many farms do you know that have multi-species? A lot of times, if you have, let's say, milk cows and say chickens, oh, those two different processes. They don't really cross pollinate much. Not, so I don't think there's a lot to know there as far as does the dynamic on the farm change if you're in milk cows when you get egg layers. No, I don't think so. I don't think you want them together. But maybe. I've never had them together. And that's not to say there's never been an egg laying chicken that's gotten in the barn where the milk cows are. But no, I've never really integrated those two. I haven't. But when you do integrate, it changes the dynamic. Does change the dynamic. Like if you have and they don't even have to be different species. They could just be different breeds. Like when you have broiler chickens, white mountain antresses, and you're going to run them in with your egg layers. Well, their rate of consumption of feed is different, and the broilers just eat a lot and poop a lot, and they're going to mess things up. So I wouldn't keep them together. I guess we have in the past, not in any great numbers. If we're going to be doing 400 broilers at a time, I don't think I would keep the eggers in with them. I don't, and we don't. But, I assume that young calves and sheep, they should be fine. They eat about the same feed. They could drink the same water. Actually, there was another mistake too. There was another thing that happened. Sheep carry a higher load of coccidia, protozoa, than calves do. And sheep can tolerate it. Calves can't. So keeping them separate for just that one reason right there, separate them. Keep them separate. I can just hear it now when Sergeant Zumwalt comes here and he sees that, well, you got those sheep or you got those goats in with your calves. What's the story on that? And that's just temporary right now. But my goats are only for petting purposes only. So they're just here for display. It's like I raise goats. I don't even like goats, but they're okay. They're okay. All right, so planning. Young calves, young animals need to be in out of the wind. So that takes planning. And that's not something that you would plan for on a sunny summer day because you're not thinking January, but you need to think January. I think, when we talk about prepping and, prepping for the end of the world, or maybe Kamala Harris being president, we're thinking worst case scenario. But worst case, I'm in worst case scenario right now with the weather. This is probably the worst. I mean, we can deal with snow, but the cold gets in everything. So the house is cold right now. We are got the wood stove just cranking, just as hot as it will go. And still, when it's 10 below outside, it's going to pull heat off much quicker. It's actually cold in here. I can feel cold air coming in from under this door right here. Where normally, who cares? It's got to ventilate. But yeah, it's cold in the house. And I plan on getting up during the night just to check on things. The other night, what night was that? Well, I woke up at 3:00 in the morning for some reason. Got up, had to go. And then I thought, it's really cold out. It was like 1. And I thought, I'm going to run the water a little bit. Just peace of mind. Water's running. And I thought I should go do that down in the milk house too. I'll just go down there and let the water run a little bit. And then when I got down there, I thought, I'm just going to run water down the drain. Why? Why would I do that? So I put a hose on it and I let it run into a 50-gallon barrel, plastic barrel, just dribbling. And I thought, if I'm going to run water, I might as well run it into something that I can reclaim, because I'm going to wind up watering the calves and everything else with buckets. So I'll just come in here and I'll get the water out of the bucket. So I did that. By the time I did that, now it's getting to be 4 o'clock in the morning. It's like, I don't think I want to go back to bed. I got fires going got a fire going in the store, got that warmed up. Then when it started getting close to like 7, I got the butcher shop warmed up and kept the house nice and warm. So when Jill got up, it was warm. So there's just a lot goes into this, and your thought process, my thought process starts to go towards, well, where am I going to be next year at this time? Am I going to deal with this again, or am I going to get this fixed now? So that's where I'm at. I know I'm going to be doing some digging tomorrow. I'm also building some counters in the milk house. So I have a place to mount a dishwasher. Yes, I'm going to have a dishwasher in there. So I want to be able to mount a dishwasher under this counter. So when the bottles come back, we can just load the dishwasher, hit the button, and then go on and do other things. Remember, this is going to be, I'm going to say this a lot because this is true. Rich people save time. Poor people save money. When I first heard that, I thought something about that sounds right. But how explain that to me? Explain that to me. Well, I didn't quite know how to wrap my head around that at first, honestly. But when we finished the milk house out so we could process the milk right adjacent to where the milk's coming out of the cows, we saved a ton of time. And you're done. And now you can do something else. Well, that milk equals X amount of dollars. So we still got those dollars coming. But now I've saved, say, 45 minutes doing it, that I can do something else. And that other thing could be, I'm processing a beef. And processing beef, the way we used to do it was one at a time, hanging from the loader. So the loader's tied up and you're starting it up and turning it off a bunch of times. So you're wearing starter out, wearing all that stuff. Now we have a better process where we have a roof that comes over, that's got a high rail up on it, that's got an electric winch on it. How do we used to do it? We used to have Andy used this. We had that chain hoist. That chain hoist is 30 years old. I bought it brand new 30 years ago. And it goes, you can lift a lot, but it's real slow. So you're choo, 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 choo. Long time. I'm good at it. But now the electric is, you have a little remote control on a wire and you want to go up. So you want to go up, you're skinning a beef and you start on the bottom legs. He's laying on the ground. You get him all skunned down. You want to lift him up 2 feet. You still got the knife in your hand. You still got your gloves, your clean gloves on. You don't have to take them off so you can handle the chain. You still got your gloves on. So then you go up. So you just cut, 6 minutes out of your process. You skin down another foot and you want to raise it another foot. There's another 6 minutes and another and another. Probably do that 6 times on a beef. And then when you're done and you want to lift him off the ground, you don't have to get up on the loader to pick him up. You just button. So I could have saved money by doing it off the loader like I used to, but I'm losing time. I'm losing time. And time and money, they kind of go together. They kind of go together. Anyway, I don't say that I fully understand that saying, but I know I've tried to save money doing things and waste a lot of time, or use, I won't say waste. You use a lot of time that if you had just put out the bucks, once you spend the money, it's gone, but you got the electric hoist. And if the electric hoist is worth what I paid for it, it should be there 10 years from now. So if every beef that I do, let's say I'm saving a half an hour in 10 years, 10 beef a year, it really adds up. I got enough time there to go to Acapulco, right? And I've saved a lot of money too. Because you really do say, if you save time and you clean up your process to where you can save time, you do make more money. You really do. And I think it's talking about money in the homesteading business is something that we should do more than we do. Okay. I'm done. Class. Yeah, there you go. You could be the first one, but it's going to cost a lot. But you'll save in the long run. You drive that white Dodge pickup up here again. My therapy goats. Oh, so you've been keeping up with what's going on. You're just staying quiet. Okay. Sean Wise says, I do the same. Dribble it into buckets. It comes in handy. My shop is frozen as we speak, but I have several buckets to get me through. Yeah, frozen water's a drag, isn't it? It's a drag. When we were planning our, or I was planning our area, we separated the cows. We used to just have the beef cows and the milk cows. They were just together, right? And so occasionally you'd have a beef cow that would come in to get milked. So we separated them. And of course, once you separate them, they're like, they want to be together because they're a herd and they have their buds, And so it took a while. And then every chance that they got, they get together again. So it took a while, but now they're separate. And the beef cows, we put them in an area, their like home base is in an area where there's a pond. And that was done intentionally. And yeah, we're kind of sacrificing the pond, but the kids don't swim in it anymore anyway, now that we have a pool. So what do we gain by doing that? The cows always have water. We don't have to run a pump to get water to them. This time of the year, let's say a hydrant freezes up. And there is a hydrant down there. But let's say that happens. Now you're digging in the cold. And maybe it's frozen. Maybe the ground's frozen. You got to get through that. So now you're out there with a pick. Yeah, done it. Been there, done that. And but you sure stay warm on cold days when you're operating a pick. Down on a cold day like today, we had to get down there and make a hole in the ice so they could eat or so they could drink. When it's not quite as cold, it's surprising. The cattle can keep that open, and they do. They step on it, and then they slurp up muddy water. They don't care. Yeah, so that was a planning issue. A cow has to have about 10 gallons of water a day, and if there is no source of water, and let's say you have 20 cows, how are you going to get 200 gallons to them? You got to have a backup plan, so the plan, you don't want to come up with a plan when you're faced with a crisis. That's not the time to come up with a plan. The time to come up with the plan is you war game it and you say, what could go wrong? What could go wrong here? Well, Murphy's Law is a pretty good law. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong. It's just when. And so you got to Okay, I know, these hydrants aren't getting any younger. Eventually, I'm going to be digging that back up again. So how can I mitigate that risk? Oh, when I install it, I'll put it on the outside of the pen. Oh, good plan. Well, that means you're going to have to run a hose in. It's okay. That's okay. Um, using the hydrant as little as possible. We do that. In the wintertime when they got a leather in them, a leather gasket in them, and occasionally that will freeze. And to get it unfrosted, if you're a 15-year-old kid, you'll just reef on that thing. But that can do a lot of damage to the thing. So my kids are like, hey, if it's frozen, just leave it. We'll hit it with some heat, dry it out. But until then, you can carry 2 buckets. You'll be fine. All right, I'm going to get going. Is there anything else I need to comment on in these times? You got a big group tonight, 1,400 people. Yeah, wasn't that inauguration something? I wonder what happened today. I heard they were going to start rounding up MS-13 in Chicago today. You know what I heard? I heard that they're going to start using tier 1 operators to go after these drug cartels. I heard that from a pretty good source. Those are the bad boys. Those are the professional bad guys. And the drug cartels have gotten pretty sophisticated, but they're nothing compared to those guys. Okay, I'm going to get going. Appreciate everybody coming by. There is no consulting call tomorrow night. We did it last week, and we're on every other week. Very productive last week. Very productive. If you haven't been to a consulting call, I recommend that you do come with your questions that you can ask me. And if I don't know the answer to it, generally there's somebody on that call that has, I've had that happen. You're going to want to do this. You got some real talent in this group. Okay, I'm going to get going here. Remember, anyone